What is up, guys? You are tuned into the Casual Wrestling Monday Night Raw post show. I am Nerdy D, and if you are listening to this, you are part of the CWC, and this is the show where we join together to overreact and answer the biggest questions coming out of Monday Night Raw this week. But before we do that, do me a little favor, tap that like button. It only takes 2 seconds, and it lets YouTube know that you are helping us grow in the algorithm, and it helps grow the casual army as we continue to chip away at the IWC stronghold over online wrestling conversation. Let's jump right into the housekeeping this week. A little bit of internal news, new show alert, the Casual Wrestling PLE experience. Me and friend of the show, Milwaukee Mike, will be doing a monthly breakdown of WWE's PLEs, giving our predictions and hot takes going into each month's premium live event. Mark that down on your calendar. The first episode will be dropping the week of Survivor Series. Now, I've kind of hinted at this the last couple weeks that I've been working on something, going back and forth, putting a lot of work, like crazy amount of work, trying to get everything organized and ready to announce this. But it looks like we're going to be moving into an official studio hopefully by mid-December. We've gone back and forth. We've kind of looked at a couple different places and settled on one. So it's a space that'll be better suited to do Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown, watch-alongs, premium live event kind of, hosting parties. We'll be able to do more of that stuff in a space that makes sense. This has been a great space for me to just go one-on-one with you guys. But the whole goal of the channel and the whole plan was always to create a channel that was about community. So like I said the last couple weeks, we'll be introducing some new faces to you guys, and we'll have a proper space and a proper studio where everybody will be able to kind of show up and say their piece. So look out for that. Hopefully by mid-December, that will be taken care of. Until then, we're only going to be doing the Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown post shows. I'm putting Champ and the Chick on hold for a couple of weeks, and the Casual Wrestling podcast will be on hold for a couple of weeks until we get that space straightened out to where we can properly do those shows in the way I've always kind of imagined them. All right, so let's jump right into it. Question number one this week, and instead of reading a question that was asked to me, I'm going to ask a question to you guys, and then I'll proceed to answer my own question. But question number one this week is, I want to propose to the CWC this week, straight up, don't think too much about it. Was this the best Monday Night Raw we've seen in the last 5 years? Let that settle in. Don't overreact and let that settle in. Because it takes a lot to get me excited for Monday Night Raw these days. And I've sat down for the last couple of weeks with zero expectations. This was a go-home show. This is Monday Night Raw. This is a Halloween episode. So many reasons for me not to like the show and for WWE to goof it up and just throw in the towel on a specific night. And I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I saw a considerable difference in the way this Monday Night Raw was booked compared to the Monday Night Raws we've seen in the past. This felt truly to me like the first time that I saw a glaring difference in what I think is Vince McMahon's style of booking, and Triple H finally getting comfortable and starting to do things the way that he wants to do it. Now, I'm going to exclude the main event from this conversation because, once again, that was more of the same shit we've seen for the last 100 weeks of Monday Night Raw. And I'm going to excuse that because going into Crown Jewel, that's the story you've kind of run with, and you've got to at least tie up those loose ends. But let's talk about what happened in the meat of Monday Night Raw. Let's talk about that first 2.5 hours that I felt was extremely impressive. And I'm guessing that you don't have to be a trained casual wrestling fan like myself. You don't have to have that eye and that kind of producer's ear to see what made Raw special this week. I don't know. You guys tell me, did you guys pick up on what I was picking up on? But Triple H finally did what you have to do in a 3-hour show to keep people interested. He added backstory. He added hype to almost every match. Every match felt special. It felt like a reason. It was being featured on Monday Night Raw, and it wasn't just there to fill time. Now, I tried to keep count. I don't have the exact number, but I think there was somewhere around 8 to 10 highly produced featurettes that gave us backstory or hyped up an individual wrestler and explained what they were trying to achieve as they came into their match. There was one for DIY. There was one for the Creed brothers. There was one for Nia Jax, one for Raquel Rodriguez. I think Candice LeRae, Xia Li, Shayna Baszler, Drew McIntyre. And I'm sure I'm missing some, but those are the ones that I wrote down that were notable to me, that immediately following each one of those little video packages, I was locked back in on what was about to follow in the ring. Normally, I find myself kind of losing attention, and it was these little video packages that kept me engaged. And we can say this without a doubt. Triple H is out here resurrecting careers from the dead. And it just seems like it's such a simple task for him. Triple H got me to give a shit about Xia Li again. Triple H has got me interested in what the Creed brothers are about to do on the main roster. It felt to me more like I was watching a UFC fight night than a standard Monday Night Raw. There was a build towards each match. Each match felt special. It felt like whoever was planning the show, actually, and I assume it's Triple H, had a reason for every single thing that was happening Monday night. Even the silly Halloween match, which is typically something that I don't enjoy, that I think is stupid, Chelsea Green and Natty made it fun because it wasn't an integral part of the show. It was just kind of, it was a cherry on top of the whipped cream. And it's as dumb as those matches can be, it was fun to watch. Now, one thing I will say that I kind of took away from that match was it makes me laugh. If you think back to a couple years ago when we did that Halloween match that featured Charlotte and Toni Storm, I remember how upset the IWC got because Toni Storm took a pie to the face, and they talked about how humiliating that was for Toni Storm. Why would she degrade herself on that level? And that's why she went home crying, and that's why she joined AEW. And then you look at tonight, or you look at Monday night's show, and I think Piper took a pie. I think Natalya took a pie. I think Chelsea Green had a pumpkin on her head. Where's the outrage for these women? These holiday matches are meant to be silly, and it gets people over when you're able to be in on the joke. When you take it too serious, that's when the IWC steps in, and that's typically kind of the end of your run in WWE. But yeah, let's talk about Xia Li, man. Resurrected from the dead, from out of nowhere, somebody who I thought could not be fixed. All of a sudden, I'm back invested. Let's talk about the finish to that match. Because I assume, we're under the assumption that was a worked finish to that match. Candice LeRae did not really get knocked out. I'm gonna speak about this under the assumption that was a worked finish. When is the last time in WWE that we got a worked TKO finish? Like, it added real elements to the match. There was a level of realism in that match that was like, oh shit, that just ended with a kick to the head. Now, normally on Monday Night Raw, I get 2 to 3 nap breaks and at least one YouTube Shorts run where I completely just lose track of what's going on the show. But Monday Night Raw show felt different to me. The pacing was different. The video packages kept me engaged. I thought Dominic Mysterio looked exceptional in the ring. I think he's getting better. He's not on a championship level yet, but I do see the progress. I see the work being put in. And I think that in his match with Ricochet, somebody who makes other people look good, you saw the improvement from Dominic Mysterio. And we'll talk about Alpha Academy and the Creed brothers and DIY in the next segment. We could talk about the women's division is popping off, not in just one storyline like typical. There's 2 high-level women's storylines going on between Xia Li and Becky Lynch, and then you have the Fatal 5-Way that still exists. We'll talk about Seth Rollins later in the show, but there was a good balance of promo, wrestling, and hype. Something that I don't ever expect from a go-home show. My expectations were not high coming into this, and I was blown away. I'll admit, I think this was one of the better Monday Night Raws I've seen in the last 5 years that didn't didn't feature some spectacular like The Rock coming back or Stone Cold coming back. This was just straight up not expecting anything, and it exceeded expectations. So let's dig deeper into a couple of the questions I got coming out of Monday Night Raw. All right, so one of the questions asked to me coming out of Monday Night Raw was, Nerdy D, why does the IWC say that AEW has the superior tag team division in pro wrestling? I think that there was a time not too long ago that I probably would have agreed with that statement, that AEW had the superior tag team division. At least when you looked at it on paper, WWE's tag team division under Vince McMahon was an absolute shambles. But I think that those days have quickly come and gone with the new booking of Triple H. I think the better question now is don't talk about AEW. The better question that we need to talk about is who has the better tag team division between Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown? Like, once we get these titles off of the Judgment Day, the real fun is going to start in the WWE as far as the tag team division goes. I think post Crown Jewel, the way WWE has featured the different title matches on every Monday Night Raw, I'm assuming that the tag team titles get dropped in the next 3 weeks. I'll talk about this in a little bit, but I'm expecting the fall of the Judgment Day at Crown Jewel. And so I think that in the next 3 weeks, we're going to see legitimate tag teams holding those belts, and we're going to get off to the races as far as some of these big teams on Monday Night Raw being able to go after and have a purpose of claiming the tag team titles. But man, I can make a case for Monday Night Raw being the premier tag team division in all of pro wrestling. That's better than SmackDown, better than NXT, that's better than AEW. Alpha Academy, New Day, Viking Raiders, we're waiting on them to come back together. Imperium, you got Veer Mahan's team floating around, and now we've got to add in DIY and the Creed brothers to the mix. Like, holy shit. I've watched the Creed brothers on NXT, and I've always been impressed with the work I've seen and the things they do on NXT, but it's just a different ball game when you get under the Monday Night Raw lights. It's different. I promise you, it's different. It's different from going to playing high school sports to playing college. It's different from playing college to playing pro. There's a difference when you go from that intimate arena to getting in front of 10 to 12,000 people and having to perform at the same level. It doesn't always translate. For the Creed brothers, it translated. And just a quick sidebar. This is just for my IWC people here who sneak in and listen to the show. NXT is not the third brand. You gotta quit saying that. If it was on par with Raw and SmackDown, these guys wouldn't be called up and get new contracts. I read that the Creed brothers are working on signing their main roster contracts. If it was a third brand, there wouldn't have to be renegotiations when you moved up. There's a large gap between NXT and the big shows that does exist, and this is proof of it. This is proof that the Creed brothers were hardly talked about outside of hardcore wrestling fans, and all of a sudden they appear on Monday Night Raw, and I can gauge from the multiple different places that I get feedback for wrestling, everybody was talking about the Creed brothers. Friends of mine who watch wrestling casually were asking me about the Creed brothers. So that just shows there is a gap in those shows. But these boys are going to be a problem. Like, these boys are going to be a problem for the Monday Night Raw tag teams that thought they had solidified their place in the tag team hierarchy. These guys move so fluid for guys of their size. They have an interesting skill set for guys that they're not high flyers and they're not really, kind of beat them up. They're these new kind of hybrid workers that can do a little bit of anything, and that's what NXT is producing. I will say that. That's the factory of NXT, is producing these freaky hybrid athletes who can jump off the ropes but also are very technically sound, and they can talk on a microphone, and they have the look. That's what NXT is doing so well that the IWC doesn't want to recognize. Like, I don't know if I can recall in my time watching wrestling, probably has happened, but in my time watching wrestling, I don't recall a guy picking a guy up for a suplex, making a tag, handing that guy off to his partner, and his partner finishing the suplex. That fucking mind blown on that one. And then the Brutus Ball finisher, which I'm sure I've seen, but I've never really paid attention to. But the optics of that on Monday Night Raw, that was phenomenal. That was a great finish to that match. The Creed brothers are athletic freaks. And I'm going to go one step farther. You have to give credit to the Alpha Academy. You have to give them their due because they continue week in and week out to entertain like no other tag team can. And so you have to, Gable is a dog. Gable is straight up a dog, and he needs to be rewarded in the near future for all the work he's put in the last couple of years. Otis is a natural entertainer. I mean, so to me, this is what a tag team match is supposed to look like. Alpha Academy and the Creed brothers, that to me, you want to write a textbook, that's what it should look like. Not these AEW high spot matches that feature just ridiculous shit after ridiculous shit that the IWC wants to point out and go, that's the best tag team. To me, I don't love that. Like to me, from a casual point of view, the Creed brothers and the Alpha Academy are leaps and bounds better at the entirety of pro wrestling than the Young Bucks. Fight me, IWC. I really don't give a fuck. But that is, from a casual point of view, I'm telling you, that is the disconnect between you guys and casual fans that you can't see is we see that as a better package. We don't like flip, kick, flip, kick, flip, flip, kick, kick, flip, kick, flip, kick. We don't see that as talent. The Alpha Academy and the Creeds, they gave us the right amount of everything. It was a perfect mixture of high flying, technical wrestling, storytelling. To me, that is the textbook for what WWE should be doing as far as tag team wrestling. But then let's go one step farther. We're going to have to talk about DIY because DIY made their in-ring debut on Monday Night Raw. And I've never witnessed two wrestlers that were so lost on a roster come together and look like they found exactly where they need to be so naturally. Like DIY, that was fun to watch. I don't have the black and gold NXT history with them, so this is my first real exposure to DIY. And the thing I noticed more than anything during their match is that they both were smiling. They both looked like they were having fun. It looked like the first time in a long time that they were both happy to be in a WWE ring, and you can thank Triple H for that. Like, Triple H has me genuinely excited for the tag team division right now. It is a legitimate reason to tune into Monday Night Raw. Where I was starting to lose faith, I could just tune in for the tag team wrestling at this point. If we can get the tag team titles off of the Judgment Day in the next 3 weeks and into the hands of one of these pure tag teams, it's going to be off to the races, man. And then we can get Nick Aldis to introduce his own set of tag team titles on SmackDown. We're rolling, man. We're rolling. There's no question right now, definitively, that WWE has the superior tag team division in pro wrestling. All right, next question. Nerdy D. WWE has tried turning The Miz babyface multiple times and it has never seemed to work as well as The Miz in the heel role. Is Triple H turning Miz heel, and how do you think this will play out in the Intercontinental Championship picture? There's a lot of truth to that. There's truth to the line that The Miz is just a better heel. I think he's a more natural heel. I think that's where he finds his comfort. I will say I'm probably not a fan of The Miz's babyface runs, the ones that I've actually paid attention to. But having said that, I think that some of the comparisons that I make inside my head are because how good he is at being a heel overshadows really any work he does as a babyface, and I never really seem to take that serious. In this case, because I think you have to look at things on a case-by-case basis. And in this case, in a case of going against Gunther, I do think this can work. I'm not ready to turn my nose up to this just yet. I think that if you're leaning into the story that this is two of the greatest Intercontinental champions going against each other and clashing to, The Miz kind of trying to protect his legacy, you can put The Miz in a favorable position. You can put The Miz in the babyface position in this story, and you can make it work. Because it's looking like they're going to ride Gunther all the way to WrestleMania. That's the vibes I'm getting at this point. And so I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. I just think that it puts you into the tricky position of now you've got to keep it interesting until you get to WrestleMania, and you do one of two things. You either have Chad Gable complete his story, or what I prefer is you have Sheamus show up and you have Sheamus complete his story, because I think that has the more emotional connection for more wrestling fans. Now, wild thought, let's sidetrack here just a little bit. I had a wild thought yesterday. The Royal Rumble, to me, has become something that's kind of gotten in the way of the major title stories, because it always has to be this unexpected winner. Or if it's somebody that we expect, then it's so predictable. What if Sheamus wins the Royal Rumble this year? Like, why wouldn't that work? What if Sheamus won the Royal Rumble, and instead of going after one of the major titles, he decided he needed to complete his Grand Slam title reign and go after Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship? I think that could make sense. I think that would be a fun swerve, and it would kind of fall in line with the idea that Gunther has made the Intercontinental Championship a prize worth cashing in that opportunity for. But back to The Miz. Gunther has to have quality stories and quality opponents if they plan to keep this run alive all the way through WrestleMania. And so who's better to put center stage in a ring with Gunther than The Miz? The Miz is that guy. The Miz is a guy who elevates stars that are already stars. Now, I know that next week we're getting a fatal four-way match for the number one contenders to the Intercontinental Championship, which shout out to Triple H. Once again, here we are. Things as simple as number one contenders matches that we have missed for so long, Triple H is bringing back, and it just creates logical booking. It's just logical, and something about it just makes us feel right. But let's be real. Let's be real here. Bronson Reed had his shot already. We're not going to book ourselves back into that circle. Ricochet has been dismantled by Gunther on numerous occasions. We don't need to do that again. The only real candidate that makes sense here is The Miz. So shout out once again to Triple H, because instead of just putting The Miz in the ring and going, all right, we're doing Miz and Gunther, he's going to book this into something that uses quality television time to tell a story, to build towards The Miz getting the opportunity to take on Gunther. And that just, that makes me feel good. But here's the thing. Here's the problem. The Miz is underrated to me. And I know that everybody says that, but it's the IWC's fault, because the IWC just will not give Miz his flowers. But if you look at The Miz, he's top 5 on a microphone. He's probably top 10 to 15 as far as he's solid in the ring. He may not be the best, but he is on the upper echelon of WWE wrestlers. He's top 5 as far as being a workhorse, and he's maybe top 3 as far as getting other talent over. I think Seth Rollins is in that conversation, but there's not a lot of names as far as people who can put other guys over and still continue to keep their value, like without ruining themselves. And so I don't know, where do you think this match happens? Where do you do Miz versus Gunther? Is it a premium live event thing? Is this just going to be one of those big Monday Night Raw moments? I'm assuming that's what it's going to be. But I think that The Miz is the guy who can bring another level out of Gunther. Now, I will tell you one thing I noticed. I noticed something that I think we need to pay attention to. Gunther isn't exactly the sharpest guy on a microphone when he has to cut a promo against someone. We've seen Gunther in the past. He's serviceable when he just has to speak in generality and just kind of speak in general about his title reign. But when he had to take shots at The Miz, I definitely think he whiffed a couple times. And a couple times, things that he thought was going to go over with the crowd, I think might have just been complete misses. I don't know if that's a language barrier thing. I don't know if maybe, we just haven't seen enough of Gunther having to get in the ring and talk to somebody. But the great thing about The Miz is that he will expose that. The Miz will show us what we're missing, and he will make people work to get over with the crowd. And the other great thing about The Miz is he can naturally revert back to a heel whenever he needs to. When The Miz goes babyface, he's so fluid with his ability to kind of shapeshift in and out of babyface and heel that I don't worry when he has to assume this babyface role in a match with Gunther. Now, I heard Seth Rollins talk the other day about the gray area that exists now in pro wrestling as far as characters and how characters have evolved to this place where they're more than just heels and baby faces. And it made me laugh when I was reading that, because I still will argue right now that logic, that is IWC logic. That is the logic that gets the IWC in trouble, and they don't understand why certain shows don't connect with certain people, why casual fans don't tune into AEW. Wrestling's just better when there's clear defined lines. That's a matter of fact. That's not even an opinion. If you look at storytelling and you look at the biggest stories of all time, they typically have clearly defined roles. One is good, one is bad. The biggest superstars to ever get over in the business typically had defined roles. Don't go to Stone Cold Steve Austin as the one example. Yes, Stone Cold Steve Austin was able to walk the line of good and bad in a time where a lot of the world was just kind of pissed off. They were just disgruntled. Like, it was kind of an emo phase of wrestling fans. But for the most part, your Hulk Hogan's and those guys, Hulk Hogan did extremely well when he was babyface, and then he did extremely well when he went full on heel. John Cena does extremely well as babyface. Bianca Belair does extremely well as babyface. That's just what works. That's the status quo. So I took that quote from Seth Rollins, and it made me laugh, because maybe that's why I don't connect with Seth Rollins on the level that some other people do. But yeah, babyface Miz, at least for the next couple weeks, means we get more Miz on TV and more Miz on Raw, and I think more Miz is a good thing. All right, last question of the week here. Nerdy D, we finally saw Damian Priest tease a cash-in. Is this the beginning of the end of Damian Priest in the Judgment Day? When I saw this question, I don't know if I read into that the same way that you read into that there. I don't think that the cash-in attempt necessarily has to be connected to the end of the run in the Judgment Day. If you're asking me, or if you're going off what I've been saying for the last couple weeks, then sure, yeah, my recommendation is that Damian Priest leaves the Judgment Day. But what I saw on television this week didn't lead me to believe that, like, this was a hard stopping point for the Judgment Day and Damian Priest. What it did read to me, though, is that hopefully we're coming to the end of the Super Friends versus the Judgment Day. Like, hopefully Damian Priest is going to set his sights on Seth Rollins and the World Heavyweight Championship. I talked a little bit about Seth Rollins just a couple minutes ago, about the interview he did where he talked about baby faces, and he talked about heels, and how heels can be complex and baby faces can have layers to them, and there's gray in characters, which is all fine. I want to expand on that a little bit, because I would argue Seth Rollins, and not in a lot of things, but this is one thing that I would argue Seth Rollins coming from a fan's perspective. I would tell Seth Rollins, I think Seth Rollins has always been better when he had a clear defined character. I think heel Seth Rollins has always been better than babyface Seth Rollins, and I think that when the lines get blurred, that is when certain people start to disconnect from his character. I would argue right now that a lot of people try to say, oh, Seth Rollins is so over with WWE fans. And I would argue that there are elements of Seth Rollins that are over. Maybe it's his song, maybe if it's his entrance, but I don't know that just the natural character of Seth Rollins is as over as everybody thinks it is. I think that Seth Rollins is a little bit afraid to get typecast into this idea that he's either a pure babyface or a full-on heel. And I think it's the babyface side that scares Seth Rollins more than being the heel. I think he's comfortable in the heel position. I just don't think Seth Rollins ever wants to fully commit to that Bianca Belair, John Cena type babyface. So he has to tell the world that he can be multifaceted. And I won't disagree. With certain characters, it works. But I will say that when you do this gray area thing, I think you immediately put a cap on how high you can rise within the company. I think there's a reason that Seth Rollins is kind of the number 2 or 3 guy in the company right now, and that is that he can't fully commit to that character. Now, if you're going to do this whole true gray thing, the gray area thing, I think that you have to look at characters in kind of the history of storytelling, characters like the Joker and the Riddle. And typically that gray area works better when you're a bad guy who has good elements. I think that when you're a good guy who tries to incorporate bad elements it tends to get muddy and messy. And I do believe that's why Seth Rollins can't get over in my head. I'm not saying it's obvious to me that Seth Rollins has all of the fans he needs. He doesn't need me as a fan, nor am I criticizing him that he's not doing perfectly fine, doing exactly what he's doing. I'm talking from my perspective, from my casual fandom perspective. But on the flip side of Seth Rollins, let's talk about Damian Priest. Because I think that Damian Priest needs some character work as well. I think Damian Priest needs to embrace a full dark heel side. And it scares me because coming out of this Judgment Day thing, if he goes head to head with the Judgment Day, he may be thrust into a babyface position. And I think he's going to have to counter that real fast. I think he's going to have to go from heel to like ultimate heel to like dark heel. And we talk about The Undertaker all the time, and we talk about characters who could succeed him in that dark spiritual role. And a lot of times Bray Wyatt was always brought up, and I've heard Karrion Kross brought up. But to me, Damian Priest has always been that guy that could be the next in line of succession to a supernatural character like The Undertaker. Now, we don't need all the special effects and things like that. I think you give Damian Priest the right entrance. You add some flames, maybe some guys in robes. You let him tap into that dark side of his character a little bit. You lay into the evil that is, Damian Priest. And I think he can ascend to the next level. But that superstardom level for Damian Priest, it's still one step ahead of where he is. He stepped up in Puerto Rico and he put a lot of people on notice. But I think there's one more level for Damian Priest to climb to. And to be clear, I do think that that's coming. I just think that it's going to have to come in the form of like going against the Judgment Day and not turning babyface, but becoming just a bigger and deeper heel than he already is. Now speaking of that, of the Judgment Day, I want to do some predictions here. We don't normally do this, but I'm going to give my predictions for Crown Jewel on this show because this will be the last time I talk to you guys this week before Crown Jewel, because there'll be no Friday Night SmackDown show this week because we'll be doing a Crown Jewel post show. So for this week, we're going to do predictions here. From now on, predictions will be on the premium live experience with myself and Milwaukee Mike, as well as you'll get some predictions on the Casual Wrestling Show where my guest will make their predictions for the premium live events. But this week, we're going to do a little differently. This is my only opportunity to talk to you guys about it. So let's jump into LA Knight versus Roman Reigns. My heart wants this to be LA Knight, but every fiber in my brain says you cannot not take Roman Reigns right here. It's Roman Reigns. Prediction, Roman Reigns. Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre. All of the teasing leading up to this has me believing that Seth Rollins is winning. I do believe Damian Priest at least attempts a cash-in at Crown Jewel. And I think that Rhea Ripley, the deal she's been making with Seth and Drew, is going to be interfering in that cash-in and stopping Damian. And I believe that we'll see the tension come to the head between Damian and Rhea at Crown Jewel. Fatal 5-way, I have Nia Jax winning that. I think Rhea Ripley loses. I think when she loses, that's what sends her into the spiral that leads her into costing Damian Priest his cash-in. Cena versus Solo, I have John Cena winning with Solo post-match beatdown that will take John Cena out of the WWE. Io versus, or Io, I always say Io. Io versus Bianca Belair. Io wins thanks to interference from Bayley, which is not going to make Io happy, which in turn is going to give us Bayley turning on Io, setting up Io as a babyface and Bayley as the heel in the story. And I think that'll be your next title match. Rey Mysterio versus Logan Paul. Logan Paul wins, and the U.S. title is immediately relevant again. Rhodes versus Damian Priest, a match that I absolutely don't care about. Rhodes wins here. I think this is the first match of the night, and I think Damian kind of flies off the hinges after losing that match, and we begin to see the splintering of the Judgment, of the Judgment Day. And then last, the pre-show will be Sammy versus JD McDonough. I think that JD wins here. I actually think JD wins here, probably by shenanigans by Dom. And I think he officially gets brought into the Judgment Day on the same night that all shit breaks loose and like it begins to implode. So I think that's what's going to happen. We'll see. We'll spot that. Let's jump into a little bit of news. So Tony Khan announced on Twitter that he had a big announcement this week for AEW Dynamite, and that announcement ended up being that All Out tickets are on sale in December. At this point, can we just admit, as wrestling fans, can we come together, casuals and IWC, come together to admit that Tony Khan is now the cringiest person in all of wrestling? Like, can you IWC guys admit that maybe you put just a little bit too much faith in the Khan man? Like, is this a gimmick at this point? He's in. You guys tell me, is he in on the joke? Because I don't think he is. I think he honestly, I think this is a man that is just dripping in desperation. You know, my expectations for this announcement were already admittedly low. And then somehow Tony Khan found a way to fail to meet those expectations. At this point, it's glaringly obvious that AEW is failing in every metric that matters. And if you're IWC, you can be in denial, but here's the problem, IWC. You make up 10% of the wrestling audience. And you are the only people that Tony's talking to anymore. He's completely abandoned the idea that he's going to try to build a bigger audience. He's going to double down and speak to the 10%. And he's going to try to rebuild by just speaking to this niche group of wrestling fans. And it's just not going to work. Like, you guys can suck his dick and like his tweets all you like, but you're not doing him any favors. I feel like at this point, Tony Khan is in full-on panic mode. And the IWC just doesn't want to admit it, but I think that he is completely enamored with the idea that he has to get back over that 1 million mark threshold. So he'll do whatever it takes. If he's got to announce major announcements every week, he's going to do it. He's going to try to trick people. He's going to bring back Ric Flair. He thought Edge was going to do it. But the problem is, here's the reality. This is what has happened. The problem is that Tony Khan has run out of names to debut. He's run out of WWE guys that he can poach. Dolph Ziggler's not going to be a big enough name to do it. Mustafa Ali's not going to be a big enough name to do it. So what's happened is the well is finally run dry on Tony Khan. There is no more big surprise that he can give that will set the wrestling world on fire. So now that the well is run dry, the metaphorical drug that gives him that wrestling high, he can't get it. So now he's grasping for any play that makes fans come and tune in. And there's no long-term play at this point, to me, that saves AEW. There's no magic name left in pro wrestling that you bring back that has everybody talking. You had that opportunity with CM Punk, and that was your best shot, and you fucked it up. You chose sides. You could make it work. So now there's nobody left. AEW is going to dwindle down. It's happening. It's happening before our eyes. The IWC can deny it all they want, but you better start looking around if you're an IWC fan and see that you're more in competition right now with TNA and NXT than you are with the two major brands of WWE. You know, and here's the problem. The IWC, you want to talk about like, you know, fair weather fans, the IWC are going to start jumping off of this AEW ship when it's not cool anymore to be an AEW fan. And they're going to flock back to TNA, and they're going to be some that defect over to WWE and to NXT. When it's no longer cool to be the hipster AEW fan, these guys will jump off the ship. I've seen it before. All it takes right now is one major domino falling off of the AEW roster. And I'll give you two names. If for some reason AEW was to lose Jon Moxley or MJF, that's it. AEW will implode. And you will see it fall to the likes of TNA. And then you get to see if Tony Khan is really, really, really willing to put money into a company that no longer can compete with the big boys. LA Knight slams part-time champion Roman Reigns, saying everyone is sick of that. LA Knight said, "My assessment is that everybody's sick of that. Here's a guy, he's got about one title defense every 3 to 4 months, 4 defenses a year, and we're celebrating the fact that he's been champion for 1,200 days. I'm surprised that LA Knight was allowed to say this, because this is something that a lot of people are thinking. He's not wrong. You know, we're being told that Crown Jewel is possibly Roman Reigns' last scheduled match of 2023. That means that Roman Reigns wrestled 6 times on television this year. January 28th, he beat Kevin Owens. February 18th, he beat Sami Zayn. April 2nd, Cody Rhodes. May 27th, he lost a tag team match to KO and Sami. July 1st, the Usos beat him in Solo. August 5th, he beat Jey Uso. And then Crown Jewel, he takes on LA Knight. It's looking like he's going to end up like 4-2 at the end of the year. That's, to me, they do a good job of booking around that and not letting us realize that. But when you look at the statistics and you look at the numbers, to me, that's rough, man. If I'm Fox Television Network, that's why I'm not renewing the contract. That's why I didn't want to pay more. It's because the big name, the big star you promised me, he doesn't show up. He disappears. He leaves. When he only makes 7 wrestling appearances in a year, what am I doing? What am I paying for? You don't pay for a television show with a famous actor and then go, he's going to guest on maybe 1 episode a season. It doesn't work. It definitely does devalue the 1,200-day title reign when you look closely at numbers like this. I understand what people are saying when they talk about Roman Reigns. And when we do throw around the word the GOAT, right? And we talk about Roman Reigns, I think we have to be careful. I think especially I have to be careful when I throw that out there. And I looked at, you defended the title 5 times in 365 days. You wrestled 7 matches and 2 of them were tag team matches. Like, we have to do better than that in 2024 as far as world title picture goes. When Roman Reigns shows up, everything feels good. The numbers are right. All feels well. But when he's not there, we definitely are going to have to take notice and hold WWE accountable for that. All right, last article here. WWE SmackDown sees a boost in ad space price. Sharp falls for all other WWE shows. I'm not going to get too into the weeds with the numbers here, but once again, this just shows how right I was when I said that SmackDown was the best show that WWE had. It was the A brand show. And this just shows how wrong the IWC was when they all tried to counter me with their left hooks and right jabs of NXT and Monday Night Raw. I like to tell you guys, I am a casual fan, but I own businesses. I understand marketing, and I tend to have my thumb on the pulse of what's going on, especially kind of like I think that I'm pretty in tune with the way Triple H thinks and the way that the market is trending. And so I can see that SmackDown is the main draw as far as mass appeal in professional wrestling. And I understand, I'm even willing to forgive that a lot of you guys like NXT. And I'm not mad at that. You guys that are fans of NXT, there's a certain niche type of wrestling that you like, and you guys ride for that, no problem there. I completely understand that. But Monday Night Raw, you have to be honest. If you think Monday Night Raw is the A show, like, you don't understand the marketing side and kind of the analytics of wrestling. SmackDown is the main draw because it is the most casual-friendly wrestling show on television. Like, when I introduce friends who haven't watched wrestling in a long time, I tell them, start by watching SmackDown. It's only 2 hours long. When Roman Reigns is there, it's by far the biggest thing on television. And outside of that, you have LA Knight, Bobby Lashley, Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair. Those are very casual, friendly superstars. They're all names that are kind of recognizable at this point. And so I guess this was more just to kind of toot my own horn that I was right when I said I'm Team SmackDown, because that is the casual show. It is the A brand show. And you can tell by what people are willing to pay for advertising. So before we get out of here, just a couple notes that I want to reiterate. No SmackDown show this week. There will be a Crown Jewel post show that posts either Sunday or Monday. No Champ and the Chick or CWC podcast until we officially get word on the new studio. And the Casual PLE experience will debut the week of Survivor Series. That's all I got for you guys this week. Hit the like button and share this episode with someone you know. Casual Wrestling merch is available on casualwrestling.com. Check that out. And until next time, keep it casual, my friends. I'm tapping out.
La, la.